Jen, should we get started? It's 8 o'clock or wait a couple minutes or
I don't see is Commissioner Dare on? I can go knock on her door real quick. I'll just go knock real quick.
okay. Thanks.
Are you on that? Are you going to leave? Are you loaded?
As we get started here in just a moment, we'll put in the chat, but Eric Whitney and I have new employee orientation at 8:30, so we'll bolt out just a couple minutes early. Um,
Okay,
Good.
Commissioner Tang, I think all three commissioners are on.
Great. Thanks everyone for joining us today for this kickoff to the short legislative session, our county legislative update meeting. Um, uh, do any commissioners have any updates that they want to offer?
Couple
Commissioner
thoughts
Brown?
here, Commissioner DeVone. So as I say, I'm going to be able to have a quick lunchtime meeting with about a half a dozen commissioners and the governor on Monday afternoon. I'm going to bring up the administrative burden concept with the governor, the letter that was sent and response from OHA, talking to Matt from St. Charles yesterday. He's very interested in this administrative burden concept too. So I'm going to share all that. Also, the other topic, bringing up the 97 corridor promotion by the multiple counties. Invitation to a geothermal tour, geothermal projects on the side of Newberry. So that was just another thing that came up recently. And then there is our bill with Core 3 has a line item in there for a $20 million investment. And I'm sure that'll come around in the bills that we talk about. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dare, any updates?
Wasn't the revenue policy that was released yesterday negative again? Want to hear from Doug what he says.
Yeah, would like to hear about that. I'll just add, I'll be I'll be in Salem on Monday as well, not Tuesday, but just Monday, and I'm going to make the rounds with Commissioner Minty and Commissioner Taylor, plugging this US 97 safety corridor investment package. And if that's for that's it for Commissioner updates. I'll pass it on to Doug.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Good morning. The 2026 short legislative session is off to a raucous beginning, a raucous start. It's back-to-back hearings, and starting on Monday, we'll see work sessions on bills. So already in week 2. Just as a reminder, all bills in most committees, there are a couple exceptions, Ways and Means, Revenue, Rules, must get out of their committee of origin by next Friday. So we've got about a week and about 8 days left to get things out. So it has been a rapid fire pace. People seem to be in a fairly, decent mood. The building is lots more functional than it's been in 5, 6, 7 years. There's what they're calling a concourse downstairs, the basement, which has skylights and a cafe and a place to get coffee. It's really quite wonderful. So, it seems like a small thing, but it makes the building a lot more pleasant for the public when they come in. So it's good to see. Commissioner Dare mentioned the revenue forecast. That's been the big issue that we've been waiting on for about a month and a half. The revenue forecast is actually better than the revenue forecast in December. So they're now predicting that we'll end up with about $300 million more in revenues than we expected at the end of last session. So if you recall, in August, they said we'd be down 363 or 380, something like that. In December, they predicted we'd be down 63. And then the revenue forecast that came out said now we'll be up from the end of session forecast, which, is not going to solve all the budget woes. There's about a $900 million gap between what the state needs to continue existing services going forward based on the new federal eligibility requirements, the SNAP eligibility requirements, other inflationary changes, just the cost of healthcare has gone up and PERS costs have gone up. And so all that means that they need about $900 million just to kind of stay even according to Ways and Means. And this helps, but it doesn't solve the problem. So I think it's an encouraging sign. Most of the funds came from corporate revenue. The personal revenue tax side was down. Corporate revenues were up, including corporate stock sales. This happened once before when Phil Knight sold $18 billion worth of stock and paid $600 million or something like that in capital gains tax revenue in a single year. And that appears to be one of the factors that led to this increase in revenue. So still have the fundamental problems with the need to attract economic development and jobs and stem the loss of jobs, but it was a little breather that we got temporarily. Not quite sure what it means to those of us who think we ought to invest more in things like highway safety or housing infrastructure, but it does relieve some of the pressure. That kind of leads into Oh, go
Doug,
ahead. Sorry.
can I just ask, so that revised revenue forecast, is that assuming that we keep the state tax code fully coupled to the federal tax code, or is that a separate consideration?
Yeah, excellent point. I should have mentioned that. That is assuming that we stay connected for this entire biennium. As you know, we're already essentially a year into the biennium, so any changes, any disconnects would just be made for a single year. They're not going to go back retroactively and make everyone refile their taxes for 2025, but they might change things for the 2026 tax filing year. Senator Broadman, who's the Revenue Committee Chair, and Nancy Nathanson, the Finance Committee Chair, have proposed disconnecting from 3 or 4 of the elements, mostly some of the business depreciation and business depreciation standards, which would generate about $281 million. That would be on top of the savings, which would bring us up to close to $600 million that maybe we weren't expecting based on the federal tax code changes. So that would lower ostensibly the deficit down to 300 million or thereabouts, but still a lot of money.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next big topic, just in general, transportation. When I sent out our newsletter a couple weeks ago, of course, the very next day, news came out that clarified the situation, and that clarification is that the legislature has concluded that they cannot repeal the measure that they passed last September. So they've concluded since it has now been referred by the voters based on that 1935 AG decision, the voters must have a chance to repeal it or not repeal it, as the case may be. So it's going to be on the ballot. The only question of whether or not that repeal will be on the ballot in November or in May is unanswered. The majority wants the repeal to be moved up and put on the May ballot. Number one, so they have earlier clarity on what the voters think about gas taxes, et cetera. But I think number two is it's a kind of a sticky wicket to be on the same ballot with, a measure that 70 or 80%, according to the polls, oppose, and you voted for it. So there is kind of a combination of factors. So the majority would like to move it to May. The Republicans and the minority, of course, will do anything they can to prevent it from being moved. They think a larger number of voters in November ought to have a chance to vote on it because typically, voter turnout in a general election is higher. So I don't know where that's going to end. There isn't any clarity on that. Whatever they do, well, if they decide to try to move it, it has to be signed by the governor by February 25th, which kind of means they've got to fast track it because it's got to get through the House, get through the Senate, takes a few days to get to the governor. So that's only 3 weeks away. So I'm not entirely certain that they are going to be able to move it to May, but we'll see on that. And beyond that, there was a question of, okay, in spite of that, how do you fill the holes for winter maintenance, standard maintenance and operations? How do you keep ODOT staff employed? And it doesn't appear to me that they're any closer to solving that, although they have had a group of 8 legislators working on a proposal, and that's all been behind closed doors. So no one has seen what they might have proposed as far as other cuts or new revenues, something to fill that gap. But I assume we'll see something in the next week or two. So I think from an overall standpoint, I'll stop there, take any questions, and then I've got a couple specific bills I wanted to mention, and then Jen probably has some other issues she wants to raise.
Chris Doty has his hand up.
Thank you, Commissioner. Doug, my understanding is in prior funding package legislation, the provision to have the referral election to May was always included in those bills as sort of a fail-safe, and that for whatever reason, when this bill was crafted, Ledge Council missed that. And so what, just wanted to put that in context. It's historically been contemplated that any referral of a funding package would always be referred to during the May election. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, my understanding is that in past measures where they were afraid of a referral, they would specify the date. I don't know if they would specify May or November, but they would specify a date. You're correct, and that would have. I think that's something right off the bat last September. Someone said to me, "Hey, they forgot to include this provision," which seems to me to be a bit of an oversight because the threat was there. Hey, if you pass this, we're going to refer it. But there are new legislators who haven't had that experience from years ago, and maybe that was an oversight.
Yeah, that's how it was described to me, and I just want to just get that out there for what it's worth. That May referral contemplation's always been on the table. It's just in this time, my understanding, it was just an oversight. When they prepared that bill.
Doug, before we leave the transportation topic, could you just, you mentioned the 8 legislators who are working on operations and maintenance funding. Is that a specific committee or some bundle of legislators, including, House and Senate leadership?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. It's kind of a combination of the two. I mean, you have on the Republican side, you have Lucetta Elmer and Bruce Starr, the two leaders. On the Senate side, you've got people like Chris Gorsuch and the Ways and Means Transportation Economic Development Subcommittee folks. The policy chairs like Susan McLean, et cetera. So it's not an official organization or committee. It's kind of a group of folks who know transportation, have been there, done that, and leadership.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other questions for Doug, Jen, do you want to take us through the bill tracker?
Yeah, sounds good. So just as a reminder, we'll just do the bill tracker report that went out yesterday. We'll just start from alphabetical order from the top. So the first 2 bills are under administration. Possibly other departments will want to weigh in on some of those bills. So I'm going to have Doug brief on them. The first one is HB 4130. This is listed as a priority 2, no position. One of our delegates, Rep. Reschke, is a sponsor of this bill, and it's pertaining to byproducts raised for human or animal use on a farm unit. So Doug, I'll let you give further detail on that.
Yeah, this is one of 2 bills that kind of relate to farm income, farm stores. And initially, 4153 and 4130, I thought, why do we need 2? But when I sat through the hearing and read the bill, then it became obvious why. 4130 is really a very technical bill that is designed to help assessors at the county level more clearly assess what is eligible for the farm property tax assessment discounts. And so there often is confusion. What is a farm structure? What is, how do you define processing versus bringing in someone else's farm product and selling it on the property? How do you assess the land underneath a structure? I mean, so it's really a very technical technical fix bill. It was supported by the Farm Bureau, supported by the Oregon Property Owners Association, supported by a bipartisan group of legislators. There's pretty good testimony on it yesterday. It seems to me to be a clarification. It's supported by the assessors, the county assessors. So it seems to me to be kind of a very technical fix bill that I would suggest that we be supportive of. I didn't hear any credible. People were opposed to it, but the opposition didn't seem very credible to me. seem to make sense.
I support.
Hey, good morning. This is Will over in planning. I don't know if this note's gotten through, but in that 4153 at the end of it, there's a criterion that that county regulations don't unreasonably frustrate the siting of that's kind of in the last provision in that section. And that seems like that's going to result in some significant litigation concerns associated with that, or trying to just figure out how to process that. In the notion of what is unreasonable and what is frustrating, and to whom that is frustrating and to whom that's unreasonable, is going to spur a lot of hearings officer LUBA activity over time. If there's any way to tighten that up, it'd be deeply appreciated.
Yeah, that's the next bill. So let's wait until we get to that one.
Oh, apologies. Sorry.
I support 4130.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it to have a really strong opinion. So I'm not going to oppose or support, but we can proceed.
Okay, so I heard two commissioners in a position of support, so I'll leave it at 2 support. Okay, great. The next one is HB 4153, which Will gave us a little bit of background on as well. There were some emails that went around last night, so Holly may want to weigh in on this one as well, but I'll let Doug give the initial briefing on it.
Yeah, so this is the farm store bill, and this is a bill that came to the legislature last year and didn't quite get it over the finish line. It passed through the House, got to the Senate committee, passed out of the Senate committee, and got held up. And there was some concern about a fiscal. So this is a bill sponsored by Representative Breeze Iverson from Frickin Deschutes County and Democrat Senator Janine Solomon from Washington County. It again is a product of a large group working over a long period of time. It would clarify the ability of essentially what you might call limited retail operations on a farm, as long as no more than 25% of the property is being used for those purposes. So 75% must still be used for actual farming. There are some exceptions for farms under 20 acres in the bill. There's a -2 amendment, which has not yet been posted, that has the AOC support, property owners, Oregon property owners support, the Farm Bureau support, et cetera. And the amendment would allow you not only have farm store, but also allow you to run events. So if you do like Halloween pumpkin patch events at your farm, or you do a sleigh ride, or you have some sort of a farm food, local food celebration, it would clarify and make it a little more clear to folks that those are understandable. I don't know. I'm looking at the bill right now. I don't know much about the issue that Will raised. I'd have to dig into that. The way the proponents describe this as in quite the opposite manner. They describe this as clearing up a lot of the uncertainty that currently exists. I mean, for instance, they showed a picture of hay bales around a little play area for kids at one of these pumpkin patches. Multnomah County came in and determined that those hay bales were a structure, and therefore structures are not permitted, and so they shut down the Oktoberfest. Another was a temporary tent that had been set up because it happened to be raining over the activities, and another county came in and said that's a structure. You can't have a structure. So this bill, it's 20 pages long. It's quite a long bill. Attempts to clarify, what is allowed and what is not allowed for a farm store. Of course, the opponents basically believe that you're going to turn a farm into a Walmart, your Safeway. I don't find that particularly credible, but then again, I'm not a land use attorney, so I couldn't advise. But I will say it is supported by the Farm Bureau, AOC. In fact, AOC was involved in the drafting of the bill. Brandon Persinger testified yesterday that he believes this clarifies things for counties and makes it easier for counties to make determinations when they get an application for a farm store.
Doug, there's a couple of hands up, and I'm sorry, a little earlier, Holly had her hand up, and so I want to just make sure that between Holly and Heather, that they get to share what they wanted to share.
Yeah, I had my hand up around this bill, but I realized we were on a different bill. But yes, this one, I mean, I think we're just waiting to see what Chloe thinks about it. Thanks, Peter, for forwarding this along to us because this one wasn't on our radar. But it would require, it looks like, on-site for environmental health to inspect on-site kitchen facilities. And so so whether fees cover that, what, sort of the nuances around what that would look like would be an important piece of information for us to understand. So Heather may have more information on what she's hearing about it.
Yeah, no, you said it. I think the big question will be what kind of regulation is going to be needed by EH if this goes through, and the cost and things like that. But I do think inspections on farms that are serving food to the public, is generally a good thing. So, but I kind of need to dig into this more and kind of talk to Chloe and our environmental health team. So I'd like to continue to watch it for sure. And I don't know if you have, Doug, any more insight into that piece of it as far as the requirements of local environmental health around this.
I don't, and there was no testimony that I heard yesterday, but I can dig into it. But as I said, AOC, I think the commissioners have had discussion on this starting well before last year, because there was a similar bill that was up last year. And as I said, AOC as a whole has endorsed it and helped draft.
Peter?
Thanks, Commissioner Chang. Doug, just want to bring your attention to Section 2, subsection 7. I mentioned this to Brandon Persinger as well. Subsection 7 acknowledges the ability of local governments to essentially adopt certain siting standards. It does speak to basically, on-site wastewater, solid waste. What's omitted is, and I just raise this for awareness, there's no mention of complying with the building code. We're talking about a retail establishment using potentially ag exempt structures or accessory structures that were not permitted for the public. I've heard anecdotally that there is an existing statutory provision elsewhere that acknowledges if you convert an ag exempt building, that it stipulates you have to abide by all building codes. But that doesn't, if that's true, and I don't know if it is, I've never received that citation. I'm still mindful of the accessory structures that are out there that again have not been developed with an eye towards the public using that structure. So a simple fix in air quotes would be to acknowledge under subsection 7, what in imperfect language here, but to, the building safety codes or, fire and life safety. But interestingly, it's omitted, and it's something that obviously we will have to regulate if this provision of this legislative concept goes forward.
Peter, there's a subsection, section 2, subsection 5, but there's not a 7. There might be a 7 in the -2, but the -2s aren't posted yet.
I have the -2 in front of me.
Yeah,
so it's on the website.
Okay. Yeah, 5 is citing standards, including sanitation and solid waste. And by the way, section 2, subsection 4 references on-site kitchen facilities licensed by OHA.
Right, I'm looking for the building code though. OHA is going to regulate the, I guess, public water systems, presumably,
Yeah, no, I realize that.
Yeah.
I was referring back to Holly's question.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so let me see. Did they post? Oh yeah, they did post the -2. Yeah, okay. That's helpful. Let me talk to Brandon about that and see where that is.
Thank you. If nothing else, the other thing I don't know if legislative intent is important, if it's acknowledged when the legislature adopts this bill, but I worry that, without that descriptive language, members of the public will be confused, and we'll be in a reactionary position. So thanks for chasing that down. I appreciate it.
Yep, now I see the dash twos. Okay, great.
I have now assigned this to Heather and to Peter, so that it sounds like this bill is quite fluid with updates and amendments. So I've assigned it to Heather and to Peter and to Will, so they can they'll now get notifications on all items going forward on this bill, and we can bring it up next week unless the commissioners are in a position to take or support or against position at this time.
I just wanted to add one more consideration. The chair of the Hood River County Board of Commissioners, Jennifer Ewer, is one of the few actual farmers who participate in AOC. She has some real concerns about this bill, understands, that having these kinds of commercial opportunities can be an important part of helping farmers, be economically viable. And at the same time, she has real concerns for new and starting farmers in places where ag land values are already high. So that's true of the Hood River Valley, and I would think that'd be somewhat true here as well. So basically, her concern is that once you add these significant value commercial activities to a farm property, then that makes that farm property out of reach for a beginning farmer when the ownership turns over, when they're ready to close out the business and move on. If there's that kind of an established use there, it just makes the property extremely valuable, which is good in some ways, but for people who are trying to get into farming, it's not so good. So that'll be a concern that I have about moving this bill forward.
I'd support just staying neutral, put her in a watch position for this week.
Okay, so I'll leave it to watch, and then we'll have the different departments be tracking as it moves forward. Okay, great. Next up.
Oh, actually, Jen, in the meeting with AOC that I was at in Salem, Samantha Bayer has been working on this for a long time, and the room at that time was generally very supportive. So we're talking about farmers. How many of our farmers actually can cover their costs? Helping them have their businesses, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I'd like us to stay neutral on this for the moment as well. There's a lot of moving parts, and it would be helpful for us to have some answers on some of these questions.
And yeah, having that fire, life, and safety ag building utilization is such a tricky situation. So that's why, yeah, let's stand by just for this week. Maybe next week we'll take a different position.
Great. Okay, next up under Board of Commissioners, there's two bills, HB 4121 and SB 1593. These both are pertaining to or involve Core 3. The first one, I believe, I get it backwards. I think the first one is the Spartacus, and then the second one, the Senate bill, is Core 3. I think that's the right order. Commissioner DeBonne, did you want to brief on any of these, or do you want to turn it over to Doug?
Is this a Spartacus bill?
Yeah,
Yes.
These both are pertaining to Core 3, one Spartacus and one specifically Core 3 without mentioning Spartacus, I believe.
So yeah, Spartacus just has a bullet under one of the subsections says $20 million in the future for Core 3. So I mean that's just future lottery bonds, which is exciting that our big project is mentioned in there. So we can take a position of support, but knowing that it's future lottery dollars that the legislature will be able to schedule for it is kind of the only real tangible item there.
So that's HB 4121 is a Spartacus one specifically. So that's the first one.
Yeah, right. And just as a reminder, last year, Representative Evans had a very similar version of this bill that I think we had supported. So they made some changes. The changes were largely technical and suggested by the agencies. So over the summer, Representative Evans worked with ODM and DHS and the Fire Marshal and DPSST to try to streamline the bill and the governor's office. So I think it's much more in line with what the governor's goal is for kind of rearranging and streamlining the process for responding to emergencies. Plus, as Commissioner Bone mentioned, some bonding authority in the 2027 through 2029 biennium, both for DPSST for their expected upgrades and for the final tranche of money at this point for Core 3.
I support. And as I say, priority one, this session's gonna happen so fast, we can let Doug know that priority one, but it'll come and go real fast in the next few days.
Can I just ask the lottery bond aspect of this? So we have seen over time more and more things being added to, being eligible to use lottery revenue. Is this a new thing within lottery revenue, or is this an existing category and just making this kind of project eligible?
Well, good question, Commissioner. This is a kind of a combination. So I think what Representative Evans involves is that DPSST and Core 3 would be eligible for state bonding, which are Article Q bonds, which is a different type of bonds. It's repaid out of either the general fund or lottery revenues, depending on the type of bond. But there's more capacity for state level bonding for state projects than there is for lottery bonding. So this falls within the existing authorization and uses, but he is trying to get all this emergency planning construction basically under one umbrella. So that's his goal, which acknowledges that Core 3 is a key cog in the wheel for statewide response and planning to a major event. And the other thing I mentioned is it doesn't actually allocate the bonds. It says it kind of sets us up as kind of a first priority for bonding in the next biennium, rather than actually allocate bonding. And of course, all of that is dependent on whether or not the treasurer says we have the capacity to bond for various things. So it's a great thing to do, but it's not an absolute certain guarantee that money will come through.
And if money does come through, is that money that is being taken away from fairgrounds and economic development and watersheds and parks and your schools and et cetera?
No, that money comes off the top.
Okay.
So that money is first priority. So after all the mandatory programs are funded, then what is left over for other types of funding? And most of those categories are within lottery bonds. This would be within the Q bond formula.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. No, I'm comfortable with support.
So Commissioner DeBonne, what is the total then if this 20 million is allocated, what's the total then that the state has put for Core 3?
$10 million is last legislative session, and then there was dollars before that too. So I think they're almost going to be up to 40, which is huge.
No, but what's the project supposed to be costing?
Oh,
Isn't it
basically, when you look at the big picture, it's like $100 million project. We broke it into 3 pieces. So phase 1, and now we're partial into phase 1A. So when you look at what you want to build, it costs a lot of money to get water and sewer under the highway, get that stubbed road out, and then fence the property and build the first building. So that's going to be, all these dollars are still not going to look like a lot of infrastructure, but the foundation will be built for future investment. But it's still, less than half.
Well, originally it was 99 million, like 5 years ago. So, but I thought it went way beyond that.
Well, you get a bunch of cops and fire guys in the room, and there's all kinds of asks.
Okay.
Okay, so I heard at least 2 commissioners for a 1 support for HB 4121. Correct? Okay, great. And then I'm sorry, I misspoke. Senate Bill 1591 is the Core 3 bill, and it didn't get on this report, so my bad on that one. Senate Bill 1593 is a separate bill. That's the one that is referenced to liability for recreational and sports. Commissioner DeBonne, do you want to talk about SB 1591 now, or do you want to put that?
Yeah, we could talk about it. We had a meeting with our kind of the EDCO Ready legislative group. Katie Brooks was there, John Stark, a bunch of folks, and we did talk about 1591. Really, that's the port bill. It's a port study bill, and it's an effort by Senator Broadman to look at the big picture in the Tri-County area, Bend, Redmond primarily, about what if we had an international port with an international trade zone. So it's a study bill for that. And what they did is they mentioned the Redmond Airport, they mentioned Core 3, they mentioned the economic functions in the city of Bend. So it's a study bill. It's like this big wild idea. There hasn't been a port in the state of Oregon, a new port in the state of Oregon since the 50s or something like that, or 50 years ago or something. I don't know what the date was. So it's just a big study bill. Redmond, some of the folks in Redmond kind of got triggered. It's like, well, why is the senator out of Bend talking about making a port overlay on top of us? The way to advocate for this is it could be self-fulfilling revenue for infrastructure at the rail, highway, and economic development level, a high level. So it's a study bill. Core 3's mentioned in it. I don't know if we need to take a position or not.
Just to follow up on that, a couple other areas mentioned is the Bend Municipal Airport, area known as Juniper Ridge near Bend. So it's a lot of areas incorporating around this central.
As I say, it's a bill to do a study.
So we could leave it as, right now it's not rated, it's not on the report. I could do a 2 watch and we could just watch it and that will generate.
Yeah, and I think it had a hearing, or maybe it's having a hearing today or something. So, I mean, yeah, we'd have to understand the big picture here. So, but if we're neutral, I don't think, that's fine at this time.
We definitely want to add it with a watch.
So it's
Yeah, so put it on the list. Yep. Anything else, Doug? Do you know anything about it?
Yeah, I've been in many meetings on this bill. I think the intent is good. There's only one other kind of inland port in Oregon, that's the Port of Boardman. Utah more recently has adopted an inland port, and it opens you up for potential federal funding as well as other additional state funding for certain things. I think that there was some miscommunication or lack of communication between the sponsors of the bill and Redmond. And so the Redmond people are a little bit, skeptical at this point. But I think that, and Senator Broadman has indicated he wants to get everyone on the same page. So this might be the beginning of a conversation, and certainly isn't the end of the conversation. So there's a hearing scheduled for next week on the 9th. But there's no urgent need to endorse it at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, so
It's
1591, let's put it on as 2 watch.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. My impression is that this also in some ways changes the control of the airport. And right now the city of Redmond controls the airport, and this would potentially create a different governance structure. So I think that those kinds of concerns are top of mind for the city of Redmond as well.
Okay.
And they're making huge investments right now. So that's why it's a, kind of serious business that they did their full faith and credit $180 million project. And now that somebody's talking about doing something else with it. So it's a moment for Redmond.
Yeah. Well, so I think watch is good.
Next up is SB 1593. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this is the bill pertaining to recreational liability. So I'll turn it over to Doug to give background on that. And then if there's any other department, I have not assigned it to any other department, but if there's any other department on that would like to weigh in on this, please.
We can go to 2 support here pretty quick. I don't know if we want to go to 1 is the only question I'd have.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, and we certainly discussed this last session. The public perception is that ski areas are having trouble getting insurance, and that's certainly the case. There's only one insurer left in the country that will insure ski areas. That's pretty critical for being able to run a ski area. So Mount Bachelor or others, Hoodoo, et cetera, need to be able to have insurance, and the insurance companies are pulling out. So this sets standards that are very similar to other states, what other states have done. So this is not, some new concept. It's pretty consistent. The only question is there are two bills actually dealing with this. This bill and actually two others, a House and Senate bill, that just insure ski areas. This bill is broader than that and does the river rafters and the guides and packers and the zipline operators and all those other kind of recreational entities, many of whom are falling under the radar, but are getting pushed out of the business by the insurance costs or whether or not they can even get insurance. I mean, it's very similar to what we've heard in wildfire. Insurance companies don't want to insure homeowners and hotels and people in a WUI. And this is very similar. The legal situation has been so dire that insurers from around the country are saying, sorry, we can't insure you. So this is designed to kind of reestablish those standards that other states have adopted and get back to a more balance from my perspective.
Are we good on it to support there then from the commissioners? I heard one. Okay, great. All right, we'll go up next to community development. Before we start there, I just wanted to flag we have about 20 minutes left in this meeting and 8 departments to get through. I'm not sure we're going to get through all of them today. So if there's any department who has a pressing bill that they'd like to get heard, please just team me and send me a message in Teams or in the chat on this one. But with that, we'll just keep going in order. Okay, great. So next up is community development.
Yeah, I'll try to be really quick. This is just for the board's awareness. I put it, CDD is not taking a position on the next several bills. Put it on a watch too. This is just a heads up. Senate Bill 1551 would invalidate deed restrictions or CC&Rs in planned communities that have restrictions that prohibit the removal of non-fire hardened building materials. So obviously, we have our mindset and focus on resiliency here in Deschutes County. So just wanted to make you aware of this legislation.
Yeah, and I just point out really quickly, I sat through the hearing on this bill a couple days ago. It's Senator Gelser-Blumen's bill. There's, of course, pushback from some of the HOA representatives, as well as the Oregon Association of Trial Attorneys pushback on it. It sounded to me like there will be an amendment coming because there's some definitional issues that need to be clarified. For instance, if a fence is on a property line, who makes the decision to tear down the fence, the neighbor or you? And so I think some clarification. Senator Floyd Brzezinski looks like he's going to propose an amendment to this bill. So it might come back in a slightly different form by next week.
Do we want to leave this as a 2 neutral then?
I mean, the general principle here that the CC&R's HOA restrictions are keeping us from fire resiliency. I'm pretty strongly supportive of that. I mean, I appreciate that there's some things that need to be ironed out, but maybe we could make this a priority 1 watch or something like that. We don't know if it's the right thing yet, but we know it's an important thing to be tracking.
Okay, and I saw Commissioner DeBonne nod his head too, so we'll do 1 watch for SB.
That's fine. Yep.
Great.
You want to go, Jen, you want me to just go through?
Yeah, if the next, I have a couple priorities from different departments. But
Oh yeah, perfect. I can, let me know how I can help. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to skip forward a little bit and then we'll go back into our order if we're on time. So next up, we're going to go to IT. This is on page 8. This is HB 4055. There's a hearing scheduled tomorrow. We have Zach Neiman who's going to brief us.
Yeah, thank you. IT's position on this is oppose without amendments. I believe we support the general idea of the bill, which is essentially coordinating with the state on cybersecurity incidents and sharing information. We think that's a great idea. However, I believe that some of the language in the bill is slightly lacking, either with objective kind of numbers. So the definitions of a cybersecurity incident in here are very subjective, meaning there's no clear definition for us on when we would report. And then the requirements for reporting are overly broad, meaning that we would be reporting potential live vulnerabilities within 48 hours of a live incident, basically pulling resources away from us and reporting potential remediation efforts and how they got in and so on before we actually know what really happened. And so best practice across the nation is to give kind of a first pass, quick status, date, time, where we're at, what type of incident it is, so that we can get people together and coordinated, along with IOCs, what we call indicators of compromise, essentially, so that we can coordinate with the rest of the state that way. The other bigger piece, I think, in this is toward the end of the bill, in section 4B, it does give kind of overbroad authority to the state CISO for sharing of this information. So once this is gathered, it actually authorizes the state CISO to share our potential vulnerabilities, remediations, and plans for cybersecurity with anyone they choose, as well as some of the educational institutions, for specifically the Oregon Cybersecurity of Excellence, that's designed to help train and build up some of the staff that's moving forward. So I do believe that it is a positive bill with the intent, but needs some work to flesh out specific amendments that would tighten down some of the constraints, and give us some objective stats on when we're supposed to report, much like what's already in there for HIPAA, or as already has HIPAA specific standards as far as when we must report to the AG's office and so on. And I believe they could bring those in similar to how they did there. Bring consistency as well as objective standards. Any additional questions on that?
Yeah, Zach, we have 36 counties in the state of Oregon, and some are much higher capacity than others. So, I would consider us a mid to high capacity county on many fronts. And so I'm wondering if, kind of this substantial state intervention would be needed or valuable in lower capacity counties, but maybe is not as useful for us, or raises other kinds of concerns for us. If that's the case, like if they're trying to take care of the lower capacity small counties, I'm wondering if there's ways to kind of create categories, or say, if you have this kind of a plan and you can demonstrate capacity to do this, then you don't have to coordinate with us as much or as soon, things like that.
Yeah, great point. I think that's very valid. I know we have a state SOC and we have several state cybersecurity groups that have been talking about how to share intelligence for a long time. Obviously, when legal gets involved, there's some complication with regard to active vulnerabilities and how we protect our infrastructure. And so that's some of this is more for information and threat sharing, trying to establish a central repository and a place for that. I know this has been attempted many times from many different avenues, but I think obviously tailoring that in some ways better. But the state SOC isn't even listed, which is what you're talking about, Commissioner Chang, where smaller counties can get resources for incident response through that state SOC. But it's not even listed as one of the pieces that they'd be sharing or attempting to drive support for.
I always think of, we've got to watch out for corporate America here. Google used to try to do Google government. Apple's a whole different ecosystem. Microsoft has owned the corporate desktop for many generations now. And, which path are we even going, and what are the vulnerabilities? So this is a real dicey situation. We want to have the best information possible, but to define something in law here is really kind of a scary moment. So as I say, let's keep an eye on it, but I support, Zach's leadership on this and stay engaged, but it makes your head spin.
With that, the recommendation of oppose unless amended sounds good to me.
Yeah, we can leave it there for now. Yeah.
Definitely, we need to watch it and leave it there. Thanks, Zach.
Sounds good. All right, so leave as is. Next, we're gonna go to page 7. For SB 1571 and turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Jen. So this one, Public Health is recommending a priority 2 support. What this is, it changes the definition of tobacco to include synthetic nicotine products like Zyn. And so this would change and make it illegal to sell these products to minors, and really kind of bolster enforcement. Right now, there is no anyone could get this nicotine product. So this is just really changing the definition of what tobacco is. And next week, there is a Senate Judiciary Committee, and Chloe is requesting some testimonies. So we'd like to testify on this one. So just seeking approval for a level 2 priority on this.
Sounds reasonable to me. So this is, you'd expect not being able to sell tobacco products to underage, and now this just opens it up to nicotine products. There's a lot of evolution in the market these days.
There is, like, these end products are kind of just, they're being passed out. You can get them online. A lot of under 18-year-olds are accessing them. So this just kind of puts more regulation around that.
Is there any reference to what other states are doing?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I was just wondering. Because I mean, sometimes it's like, because this is national issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 support's fine.
Heather, please testify. And good luck. Yes.
Will do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your support.
Okay, great. So we'll go back. I haven't heard from anyone else, so we'll go back to the top where we're on page 3 at SB 1561 with Peter.
Yeah, thanks. This is just a neutral position, priority 2, again, just letting the board know that there's legislation that would, in the event of a natural hazard, allow the restoration or replacement of a dwelling, and doing so that it's not a land use decision, so that this would be on our resource zoned areas of Deschutes County. There is some interesting provisions that acknowledge that if this were to happen, one would be able to rely on the ladder of when the building was constructed, or no later than 2008. I've heard through the grapevine there's some concern about the ability to go back and kind of resurrect those codes in 2008, but Doug may know more about that. But in any event, it's I think an important bill, just acknowledging the aftermath of the loss of property on these resource areas in the event of a natural hazard.
Yeah, Peter, I have not heard that, but I can look into it.
The commissioners in support of leaving it at 2 neutral right now, so it still pops up. Okay, I got 1 thumbs up. 2. Okay, great. Next up, SB 1578, Peter.
Yeah, this bill has a couple of elements. The first one doesn't relate. It allows some residential development, rural residential development in sparsely populated counties, of which we are not one, but wanted to raise your attention to sections 4 and 5. They would allow accessory dwelling units on EFU property where there's a non-farm dwelling. It would also raise the size of an accessory dwelling unit for those eligible areas, not just related to non-farm dwellings, from 900 square feet of livable floor area to 2,500. I just want to let the board know that in Deschutes County, non-farm dwellings are cited on the worst soil of a property as dictated by state law. That's class 7 and 8 soils. It's very difficult to find an area within those soils for a drain field. So I've communicated to AOC that it's gonna, if this bill were to pass, it will further complicate one's ability to, if they are interested in an ADU on these 7 and 8 soils, because the likelihood of finding another area with a drain field and a reserve area is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible. So 2-dimensionally, it seems promising, but pragmatically, for the siting of a functional septic system and drain field, it's going to be difficult to attain.
Peter, this is one of the bills that the Central Oregon Caucus discussed last week. Senator Nash is the main sponsor. Seemed to have support from the other Central Oregon Caucus members. But as I heard it explained by Senator Nash, it did not apply to Deschutes County. Is that correct? Or am I missing something?
I may be misreading the bill. I saw that there's section 2 that relates to sparsely developed counties. And then if you go to sections 4 and 5, I read it to pertain to all counties. So it's a separate section of statute. And so I conservatively assumed that since it was relating to ADUs, that it would open that up for all eligible counties. But maybe I read too intently or intensely into that language.
The
Well,
bill,
it looks like section 2 says that a county with a population density of less than 30 people per square mile based on the 2020 census may approve all these things. So I think that section 2 governs the rest of the bill.
Okay, well then in that case, I apologize for getting us out in the weeds. I just wanted to, in the event that sections 4 and 5 did not pertain to section 2, that these were opportunities as well as certain limitations.
Yeah, well, that's good for me to know, and I'll go clarify that with Senator Nash's office to make sure.
Thank you.
Seems like a drain field would be a fine place to sub-irrigate some agricultural activity too. I mean, I don't know if that's ever come up. I'm sure a property owner said, hey, I'll put my house on the rocks, but why not drain off underground in an area that's going to be for, growing activity? I'm thinking in Deschutes County, forage grass, I mean, that'll be the green spot in the grass. But if it doesn't apply to us, let's not talk about it anymore.
yes, it had broad support on the 7 a.m. call 2 weeks ago. So definitely they like the idea. I believe up to 1,200 square foot houses could be built.
This is not
Peter, I would like to clarify from Peter, where are we at that density threshold? Because we see legislation passed with a certain threshold, and then that can creep sometimes. So if we're pretty close to 30 units per square, 30 people per square mile, then this is something that we probably need to pay some attention to.
Great question, Commissioner. I'll find that out and send all 3 commissioners that information. I don't have it off the top of my head.
It's a big county. Okay.
64 and a half as of 2022. So 64 and a half.
Okay.
Population per square mile.
Good to know. Thank you.
Are we comfortable then bumping this down to a 3? So it falls off. Or do you want to keep it up? Yeah. Okay, got that. All right, we have 2 minutes left. We have one more bill that I wanted to get through. If people are comfortable staying on for a couple minutes. It is HB 4148. This is the TLT bill. So we've talked about this a lot, and DA Gunnels and Robert have both weighed in on this on page 4 and page 5. So if we're good to stay on and talk about this one real quick, we can turn it over to them to brief out.
Okay, I'll start speaking to this, and DA Gunnels, feel free to chime in if you want. So really, there are 2 bills, House Bill 4148 and Senate Bill 1562. They're essentially the same bill. I listed this as priority 2 just for awareness for commissioners, although I put no position. What this does, the interesting thing, this is a little bit different from the bill from last year, which tried to expand the definition of public safety. That expanded definition isn't in there now. This one changes the split of 70-30, 70% to tourism, 30% to counties, to 40-60. So 40% would be spent on tourism, 60% can be used for county services. But the interesting change for this bill this year is it allows special districts to be eligible for the funding for services provided by a special district in lieu of a city or county. I want to mention that because I think it also opens up say if we had a special district that also provided police services, sheriff's office services, they could ask for funding from TLT funds to be used for that eligible purpose. So it expanded that. That's just a small section in there, aside from the change of percentages. And there's a biennial reporting that we'd have to do with the state. But I think it's a little onerous, but it's not too bad. So I don't have any objections to that. However, when we passed our sections of the TLT bill, the original 5% and then the 3 1% after that, we were very specific with voter intent of how those funds would be used. So I don't know that this doesn't require that counties change how they allocate funds, but counties may. However, for us, like our third 1%, that 1% fully goes to VCO. That 1%, because that's what voters approved in the ballot, would still be required to go to VCO. We wouldn't have the option of splitting that out any differently. So I don't know that the board would want to oppose or support this, more of a watch, but I just wanted to bring it to awareness because we've talked about this one quite a few times.
Yeah, like I said, this is a priority too with a watch. It does seem much more radical than the one last legislative session, much more radical change to the scheme. And we heard lots of feedback last time about concerns about damaging the tourism industry here if even that smaller change were to be implemented. So I have a concern about that. I don't really want to be in the position of damaging our tourism industry, which is critical for a lot of things around Deschutes County.
Yeah. Robert, can I just clarify? So the way the bill that went the bill that was being kicked around earlier would only affect the final percent of our 8% anyway, because of the date, basically increments of TLT that were put in place past X date. Is that still the case?
This bill, and Doug, feel free to chime in anytime. This bill, based on my reading, it says counties may elect to change the allocation on previously passed bills. So that they may, but it's not required and they don't have to. And that's why I referenced, but we still have some voter intent language that would keep it restricted. But that first 5% that the voters passed is definitely no limitations on the mandatory allocation. And that's why right now, in general terms, our split is 75 county discretionary and 25% tourism. There are some nuances in the language. And the other reason is I don't think the other piece of this is say we used to send $1 million to tourism, and then it went up to 2 million, and now it's over 3 million. So just because the price is increasing the percent based on the room values, they're growing. The amount we spend on tourism has grown tremendously, even though we've never changed our taxes because of inflation and costs and things like that. So we'd still be giving a large chunk of money to tourism. Now, the bill doesn't specify whom we give it to. We don't have to allocate it all to VCO. It could be some other DMO or tourism related marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just echo that the bill is entirely optional, does not dictate. This is totally contrary to what you're hearing from the opponents. It's not mandatory, doesn't dictate any percentage of any of the funds, and it leaves the flexibility to the local elected taxing jurisdiction, which is the county commission in this case, or a city, elected city, to make those changes. And any proposed changes would have to go through a public process and hearings and notification because it's part of your tax structure and part of your budget. So I think there are some fear tactics coming from the other side that are not necessarily accurate, but I flagged for Nick, and I think he sent it out. The bill is very clear. A jurisdiction may do this, it may do that. There's no shalls in there, it's all may, and it's all up to the local jurisdiction. There are some jurisdictions on the coast that can't spend the money on tourism, so they have several $100,000 sitting in bank accounts. They don't have enough public safety. They don't have enough, public toilets for people to use, and so people are constantly going into restaurants and things. So that it really is designed to kind of meet the local jurisdiction where it's at, in consultation with your constituents and the voters.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, as DA Gunnels was talking about, I want to keep tourism whole locally, and we understand, tracking this bill in its past form and its recent forms. I think I have a good grasp on what they're looking for. So my goals are to keep tourism whole, a sustainable funding level close to where we're at. And also to ensure that if people are interested in adding increments of TLT in the future, because we are lower than other counties, most other tourism counties right now, that that would be worth our while. Right. So, 70/30, the former 70/30 allocation, it wasn't worth even considering, in my opinion, trying to push through another 1% increase. But yeah, so the two lenses that I look at this or any other legislation through are, number one, does it protect our local tourism industry at a sustainable funding level? And number two, does it give us options to generate real revenue through future new increments of tax? And I'm not comfortable with this. I was comfortable with, only increments past a certain date of establishments are open to tinkering with the reallocation. I'm not so comfortable with this kind of open-ended giving broad discretion. Doug, I understand that it is optional. It's not mandatory, but I don't know how a future Board of Commissioners is going to interpret that and what stance they're going to have.
I want to say that we have to worry about snow and smoke. So Mother Nature, definitely, we've got to keep our tourism as happy as possible. The business people in our meeting on Tuesday were incredibly concerned. So want to keep them as happy as possible.
There's support for keeping this as a 2 watch, so thumbs up and we can see how it's progressing. I got 1 thumbs up, okay. Great, so we'll do a 2 watch for, Robert, sorry, was that for both the bills too, SB 1562?
Yes, they're basically similar.
Okay. So with that, we're past time.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Sorry for going over.
And we'll pick up where we left off next week. Thank you.